There's no doubt that for many people, feeling different means feeling excluded, left out, left behind. And while that can be overwhelming, for some it becomes an impetus, and even the very thing that gives them the strength to excel. Andreas Souvaliotis fits that bill as his memoir, Misfit, Autistic, Gay, Immigrant, Changemaker, lays out in brilliant detail. He's the creator of the world's first eco-rewards app and of the popular wellness app, Carrot Rewards. And we're pleased to welcome Andreas Souvaliotis to our studio for more. It's great to have you back here.
It's great to be here.
That is one heck of a title, I gotta say.
Thank you.
Did you come up with that?
I sure did.
I mean, it just sums it all up in, four pretty quick words.
I intended it to be a little bit in your face on purpose, because to be honest with you, I believe that labels really, really make a difference. I find labels liberating. And so I wanted the book to tell you the story from the get-go, from before you even flip it open, about the fact that this is about a really different person.
Well,
right?
You go beyond that. You call yourself different, you call yourself weird.
Mm-hmm.
How come?
I call myself weird all the time because I am. And to be honest with you, we're all different. The whole theme, the reason I wrote your book, frankly, is for your kids and for everybody's kids. Right? The idea is to inspire younger people to not go through as much of life as I did, trying to quash the things that make them different, but instead to start harnessing them early in life. Figure out what makes you different and think of it as an asset.
Well,
think of it as a niche.
Here's one thing that made you different early in life. When you were a little kid, you went on TV and you did a trick with a calendar. Tell us about that trick.
So I was born on the spectrum. I was certainly not diagnosed until much later in life, but I was definitely on the spectrum, and you'll know right away when I tell you about this. At the age of 4.5, I was on national TV in Greece telling you then what day of the week it would be today in the year 2019. So I had memorized an entire calendar's Sundays because they happened to be in red and that color stood out for me. And once I memorized those 52 Sundays, I could extrapolate back and forth, not just within that year, but through multiple years and tell you what day it would be on January 4th, 2025.
Did you have an understanding at that young age that that was an extraordinary skill?
No. In fact, throughout my childhood and adolescence, that stuff not only felt a bit natural to me, but it also felt very uncomfortable that people were pointing at me all the time and saying, oh, look at that genius, look at that weird kid. It made me feel more weird and it made me feel like an absolute outcast instead of making me feel special.
In which case, did you try to tamp down that kind of skill?
Oh my God, did I ever. Because, it wasn't just in numbers, it was also music. I was kind of celebrated as a musical prodigy at the age of 6 and 7 and 8 and all that stuff. And yet the things that made me stand out were the things that terrified me about me. Why do I have to be so different from everybody else? Why are they putting me on those stages? Why am I weird in my social interactions? And why don't the other kids like me as much as they should like me? All of that ended up adding up to huge insecurities as opposed to special pride.
You're, as your name suggests, and as you've already told us, you're from Greece originally. How old were you when you came to Canada?
18. When I escaped to Canada.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. You escaped to Canada.
Yep.
That's your word.
Yep.
Why did you feel a need to escape?
So I really was running away from all kinds of marginalization. I'm sure you know plenty about homogeneous European countries. Greece is one of those. My birth country is a beautiful place, but it's made up of only white people who are only officially heterosexual. They all think that sameness is their best asset. And so the thing that sticks out isn't particularly welcome. And I certainly wasn't very welcome. I was the gay kid, I was the weird kid, I was all the things that they don't love. And I was really running away from that. I was blessed with a bit of a connection to Canada because my dad used to work for a Canadian airline. And so I knew this country and I knew everything about its pluralism and its inclusiveness. And I wanted to go to a place that would accept me. And so I literally packed up my bags the day I finished high school and moved here.
What year was that?
1981.
1981. Here's an excerpt from the book. I remember the first time my dad said it. Then he said it again a few weeks later. And he kept saying it in one form or another for many years. It was that horrible line about how it would be easier for him if one of his sons died than to find out he had a, quote, faggot son. Andreas, how old were you when you first heard that?
Maybe 7 or 8. And here's an interesting thing about it. It made me realize who I am sooner than a lot of other gay kids. Because when somebody puts it in your face in such a horrible way, when someone shakes you with it and terrifies you about it and says, you are that terrible thing, it makes you totally aware of it. I probably wouldn't have realized I was gay until much later in childhood, like most kids do. But somebody put it in front of my face in such a horrifying version. And my dad, by the way, wasn't a regressive guy. He wasn't a redneck of any kind. If anything, he was a progressive man for his time and place. But it was that time and place. And so I grew up literally terrified of who I was.
How does a progressive man, for his time, even for his time, use that kind of language to his own son?
1981 or 1971, whatever that was, Southern Europe. You know, in some places it still happens today, honestly. I mean, think of the laws that people are passing right now in places like Kenya or Zimbabwe, right? I mean, it does actually happen.
So when you were, at the time your father was saying this to you, you just said you weren't sure even yourself what your sexual orientation was. At what point were you sure?
Oh, I was sure that day. Because until that age, I mean, no 7-year-old kid sits around thinking, oh, what's my sexual orientation? It wasn't even a topic. But when somebody says to you, there are two kinds of people out there. They're the ones who have the right sexual orientation and the ones that like the same sex. And I would rather have a kid dead than a kid that likes the same sex. And I thought, oh, that's what I like. Like it was like a way of showing you who you are.
What was your mother's view?
Equal, similar. Yeah, so imagine growing up like that. And again, I don't fault them. They were products of their era and their environment. I think they were very cool for their era and their environment, but they were certainly not, it certainly wasn't an easy place for a gay kid to be growing up or an easy family.
After your parents understood what your sexual orientation was, you hopped on a flight. What did they tell you?
Actually, they hopped on a flight because the coming out happened when they were visiting me in Winnipeg. They hopped on a flight home and they said, we may never see you again. They were both hoping to, at this point, it was no longer a question of having a dead kid because their kid was very alive and very gay. But frankly, I think at the time they were hoping they would be dead. They were so crushed by this. And it pains me to remember that moment. But they were so crushed because they were the products of a time and a place that taught them that they have the wrong kid.
I'm trying to imagine, though, parents getting on a flight saying, I hope our flight crashes so we won't have to live with the ramifications of what we have just learned.
Yeah.
How crushing was that for you to hear?
Well, I was a 22-year-old kid at the time, and I was frankly had the self-confidence of an amoeba, and I was completely crushed. That was one of the lowest moments in my life, but I also call that one of the most useful turnaround moments of my life because that was kind of the lowest of the lows. And I realized after that I'm on my own. I have to build my own self-confidence. I have to build my own self-worth coming out of this. And what helped also was what happened a few days later when my mother actually made me go to one of the most prominent psychiatrists in Winnipeg because she thought that maybe he can cure me.
Or was this part of conversion therapy?
Not officially, or maybe it was their attempt at finding a hint of conversion therapy out there, but I went to see this great psychiatrist who really was a great psychiatrist and was well known in Winnipeg. And the fellow looked at me and said, why are you here? And I said, well, because I'm gay. And he looked a little startled. And his next question was, who sent you? Did you come on your own or did somebody send you? And I said, actually, my parents sent me. And he literally closed his book in front of me, stared at me with a big smile on his face and said, we're done. And I said, what do you mean? And he says, well, it's not you that has to see me, it's your parents. And I just felt so liberated. It was such a special moment to be told, perhaps for the first time in my life, by an expert that I'm the normal one, right? That there was nothing wrong with me, I'm just normal. And that others who don't think that this is normal perhaps need more help than I do.
So that had a dramatic impact on you.
That was kind of the beginning of this confidence building phase of my life that continues to this day.
Did you ever, during the course of this time in your life, wish or pray that you weren't who you were? Did you ever wish or pray that you were homosexual, that you would not be gay, that you would be heterosexual?
Oh yeah, and not just on the gay front, for sure, in terms of my sexual orientation, all the time. Imagine how much easier life would have been had I been a straight man back then. And that's the line I was using on my poor parents. I kept saying to them, do you really think I'm doing this on purpose? Like, imagine how much easier life would have been the other way. But yeah, fundamentally, before that moment of confidence from the psychiatrist, I just sat there all the time and sort of felt miserable about who I was. But not just on the gay thing. As an autistic man who didn't have the diagnosis, back to my point about how important labels are, I was sitting there going, why am I weird? Why am I so unfiltered? Why can I not hold on a job for very long? All the things that made me kind of quirky and edgy and weird, I was constantly regretting them as opposed to embracing them. And that's why the book.
Did your parents ever come to accept you for who you were?
Yes and no. I mean, they were fighting their nature. They were fighting all their programming in some respects. And yet they tried pretty hard. One of the most special moments in my life was on my 40th birthday. My now widowed father came to visit me here in Toronto. And he sat next to my incredible spouse. And as my partner was designing all of the banners that he was going to hang during the party and all the special pictures he was making and so on the computer, my father sat next to him for a couple of hours in utter fascination. And then he walked up to me and he said, "Can I take you to lunch?" And I said, "Sure, Dad." And I was so surprised. My father had never done such a thing. So the two of us went out on a special father-son lunch date. And after lunch, with his pipe, he always smoked a pipe, with his pipe hanging out of his mouth, he looked at me with this very sort of affectionate look and he said, "You know, I gotta tell you one thing, in case I'm not around soon. I want you to know that I think you are so lucky." And I'm like, "What?" And he says, "You are so lucky because you have someone in this world that loves you as much as your partner loves you." And I thought, wow, that is about as much of a turnaround as one could have hoped for after everything I had been through. And sadly, a year later, he was gone. So that's one of the sweetest memories I'm left with from my dad. It was just so, such a turnaround.
All right, we've talked about your sexual orientation. Let's now delve deeper into your autism. How old were you when you finally got that official diagnosis that you're on the spectrum?
Oh, no, this is something you won't believe. The official diagnosis came a year ago. So as I was writing this version of the book, which is the more honest version of the book, there was a previous version of Misfit that actually became a bestseller as a self-published book, if you can believe this. But this version required a lot more detailed attention. And to be honest with you, I wanted to be more blunt with this. I wanted to put the word autistic on the cover, and I didn't think it would be appropriate unless I had the official diagnosis. So I was actually sent to one of these specialized adult diagnosis places for autistics. And frankly, it was such a blunt diagnosis. It was like I'm a complete, like I'm off the charts, kind of on the spectrum. So I was 54. But I've known for a long time.
I was going to say, you've been obviously, you have suspected that this was the case.
Yeah, I've had friends who are specialists in the space. So for the longest time, they would smile at me and say, "Are you kidding? Of course you're on the spectrum. It's so obvious."
Now, you say it's so obvious, but you and I have been sitting here talking for 10 or 15 minutes already, and I would not have guessed for 1 second that this was an issue for you. So what am I missing?
One, it's called a spectrum for a reason. So I'm definitely at the higher functioning end of the spectrum, but all you have to do is talk to somebody who knows me more than 10 minutes, like my colleagues or my spouse who's known me for 30 years, and they will tell you that there is absolutely no doubt that this weird guy is on the weird spectrum. And I say weird in a positive way, because I think we all should embrace that. But the second thing I would say to you, and I heard this from the therapist that diagnosed me last year, we all develop coping mechanisms. And insecure little kids like me who had to overcome all the superficial weirdness and had to fit in somehow, work really hard at developing those coping mechanisms.
Andreas, you're not failing to make eye contact with me. You're not demonstrating any particular tics or unusual behavior. Right? This is as blessedly normal, I'm sorry to use that word, this is as blessedly normal and interesting a conversation as I've ever had.
I have tried so hard to be normal, so hard, for so many years. And I can tell you, even now, when I am meeting with my colleagues, they are aware all the time, because of course I'm now open about it. They're aware all the time of how many little off-ramps exist in my behavior, how many times I am not normal. And you should have my spouse on the show and ask him, because that would be quite remarkable.
Well, here's how you describe it in the book, and we'll bring this graphic up for people to read along. All my quirks, my barely controlled social awkwardness, my extraordinary math and music skills, my chronic and frustrating discomfort with eye contact, my obsessive love of order and routine, my trouble coping with disruptions and unexpected events, all of it now started to make sense. All right, you've described how it has had an impact on you. You have a brother.
I do.
Nikitas.
Pronounced beautifully.
Also, thank you, who's also autistic,
Yes.
but lower functioning than you. Is that the right expression to use?
That's the right expression. That's right.
Okay, how are you two different?
So my brother is, so first of all, every autistic person, as you know, is different from another autistic person, right? You don't all share the special skills or the special quirks. So my brother's special skills are in a different area than mine. He has the most extreme photographic memory you would ever see in a human being. If you ever watched the movie Rain Man,
Sure.
that's my brother. My brother will meet you today and will meet you again in 37 years and tell you how many polka dots existed on your tie that you were wearing today. He's unbelievable that way. Nothing ever gets erased. He loves it now. He's become so proud of the things that make him different. He's lower functioning socially. It was, he probably wouldn't have been able to be a CEO of a company, for instance. But he is just as perceptive and just as sensitive to other people's perception of him as I am.
Is he heterosexual?
He's heterosexual.
You disappointed in that?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Your autism, how do you think it helped you become a better entrepreneur?
I'm not sure that it made me a better entrepreneur. It made me a different entrepreneur. And frankly, it gave me a bit of a niche that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I should describe to you the entrepreneurship moment I had. So I was actually never an entrepreneur. I was a Bay Street guy. I was a marketing company CEO until a dozen years ago when climate change became a bit of a topic. And as you might imagine, marketing would be a field that would be dramatically impacted by climate change, right? The way billions of consumers behave around the world can be impacted so much by such a big thing. I happen to be one of the earliest students of climate change because of my autism. And at the time, I didn't realize the connection. My autism makes me a math freak. My math freakness makes me a climate geek, right? People who love numbers should love climate and weather because it's all about numbers and randomness and all that stuff. So ever since I was a little kid, I would make the worst dinner date you could possibly imagine because I would sit there with you and talk about the weather in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia today. And yet, when Al Gore started talking about climate change, and I actually had the good fortune of becoming a direct student of his, I was so taken by all this. And I thought, oh my God, this is really going to happen. This is really going to change everything when it comes to my field of marketing. It will change the way we talk to consumers. It will change the way we try to inspire consumers to be better or different. And then I realized that nobody was thinking the same way I was yet, none of my peers across the world. And nobody had thought about the idea of harnessing the massive power of the marketing industry and specifically the points industry, the incentives industry that I had specialized in to make the world a better place. So I thought, what if somebody invented an eco-points program, which is what I did.
And you did. Were you concerned at any point along the way that your autism was going to prevent you from making the necessary connections you need to make with people in the business world?
No, for two reasons. One, because I wasn't 100% tuned into it. I wasn't thinking of myself as autistic every day. And two, because I had so many coping mechanisms that I had done okay. I was already fairly active in the business world, and despite my quirks, I think I've done okay in terms of making connections.
I think you've done more than okay. You're wearing a carrot on your lapel. That's for Carrot Rewards, presumably?
That's right.
How does that work?
So Carrot, you may already know it. It's the most popular wellness app in our country, and it's my proud baby. Carrot was essentially the granddaughter of my Eco Rewards program that I invented 12 years ago. It is the world's first national wellness rewards platform. So we give every Canadian points, whatever points they love already, Aeroplan miles, Scene points, Petrol points. We give you the option of earning whatever points you are addicted to already, just for learning how to live better, how to live healthier, how to respect the environment, how to manage your money better. It's a wellness platform, the likes of which the world has never seen.
How do people get it?
They can just download it for free. It's a free app. Anywhere. It's Carrot Rewards. It's if you actually just type Carrot, you'll see it comes up right away as the most popular app. And it's hot. People love it because they get free points just for living better.
Does it actually make them healthier?
It makes them so much healthier that if you got me started, I wouldn't stop bragging about it. Let me tell you this. We have over 1 million Canadians on this app. Half of them are considered sedentary because they walk less than 5,000 steps a day. That half 500,000 people are now walking 21% more every single day because of our app.
So that in itself makes them healthier, obviously.
Think about it.
Yeah.
If you increase my physical activity by that much every day, it has a profound impact on national health.
Forgive this tawdry question, but if it's a free app, how do you make money off it?
So again, the world's most honest but most simple business model. The points that you earn by using our app every single day, and remember, you only earn those points if you do what we ask you to do, right? If you walk a little more, or if you take a quiz about how to cook healthy, all those points we buy from the points programs that sell them to us. We mark them up and sell them to our clients, who are typically government agencies that want to make you healthier. Nobody has ever seen a simpler business model because we really only make money if we make you healthier.
Gotcha.
It's that simple.
Your autism comes under the category of something experts call neurodiversity. How hip do you think society is right now to neurodiversity and the many different kinds of options in which it presents itself?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think it's a marvelous time for me to be telling the story through the book, precisely because everybody's tuned into this. I'm not sure that, people would love to give birth to another autistic kid. I'm not sure that it's actually the preferred way to be, but it's certainly accepted that a lot of kids out there are autistic and that they have an enormous amount of potential, that they can have real lives.
The parents of autistic children right now are probably the most powerful special interest group in Ontario today. I mean, they are out there and they are making their voices heard. There's no question about that.
And for good reason.
It's a shame, Andreas, that you haven't been able to sell any copies of this book. What did you tell me before we started?
Yeah, well, the book officially only launched yesterday, and it's already kind of topping all of Amazon's charts in a whole bunch of categories, business and LGBT, and I forget where else, ahead of Steve Jobs' book, which is kind of cool. But more importantly, and I should put that plug in there because I did not write this book to make a penny. Every penny that's made from this book goes to my favorite charitable project, which has to do with inclusion and diversity, which has to do with everything I stand for and everything the book stands for. It's 6 degrees, and I'm sure that maybe you can talk about 6 degrees. I'm not sure.
The link is up there on the.
It's a very, very proud Canadian-made world conversation right now, and I'm proud to be one of the co-creators of it.
Yeah, you brought some of the guests to our studio a few months ago, and we had some great conversations.
So proudly.
Yeah. Andreas, thank you for visiting us here at TVO tonight. The book is called Misfit, Autistic, Gay, Immigrant, Changemaker, a memoir. Great to have you here. Thank you so much.
My genuine pleasure.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.